Introducing National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk programming that you can access 24/7. For the premier sports talk experience, tap into our Roku channel. Start your mornings with Mac and Jack covering all the weekend sports action. Then pour a cup and enjoy all the sports you can drink on the Coffee and Sports podcast. At midday, talk sports from east to west on the Coast to Coast podcast. Followed at night by some hot girl talk with Prim and Proper Sports featuring Sonja Pearson. Talk boxing on the Gloved Fist. Yankee fans tune in for Start Spreading the News. And there's more on the College Sports Huddle and Sports Scope with Robert Butler. There are 20 podcasts in all and 70 weekly shows giving us a 3.4-star viewer rating. To find us on Roku TV, search for National Streaming Sports on the Roku search bar. Click on the logo and you're in. National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk for America.
Football season is here, and SeatGeek is my go-to for buying tickets. Now, with SeatGeek, every single ticket is backed with their buyer guarantee. We've all had plans change, and when you can't make it to the big game, SeatGeek has you covered. They're the only ticketer that allows you to return your tickets ahead of the event for credit with SeatGeek swaps. So when things come up, I know that my tickets won't go to waste. So what are you waiting for? Download the SeatGeek app to maximize your possibilities and shop live events with confidence.
Good morning and welcome to the Mac and Jack Show. I'm your interim host sitting in today for Mac, Sonja, and I'm sitting here with Jack. Good morning, Jack. How are you today?
Hey, good morning, Sonja.
Good. It's early. I was muted. Thank you so much for that. All right. So we got a nice little hour here. Of course, download the Roku app so that you too can be in the know when we are live 24/7 sports without the cost of cable. And shout out to Linda and Mac, the great production team over there at National Streaming Sports. Jack, I hope you're doing great today. It's stormy here.
I am a couple more weeks in Florida, Sonja. You hear the birds tweeting in the back. I'll be in New York in a couple of more weeks, and you won't hear all this noise in the background.
Oh, so you're going back home for the summer, and you're like a bird. You fly south for the winter.
I'm in Florida for the winter. You got it in reverse, Sonja. I don't have a summer home in New York. I got a winter home in Florida. You got it backwards.
Winter home in Florida. I got to say it the right way. I know either way you're trying to avoid the heat, right?
It wouldn't be a show if I wasn't attacking you right off the bat. Being aggressive. That's the way Houston has to be with Florida tonight. Show their aggressiveness right off the bat. You like that segue into it, but
I love it, Jack. I'm still grieving, but definitely an aggressive game that's going to be played tonight between not Duke, but Houston and Florida. Florida barely got by Auburn, and Houston barely got by Duke. So it's going to be a tooth and nail fight tonight for the NCAA men's championship game.
Well, it should be a lot better game than the women's game yesterday, which I watched. UConn and South Carolina. And you got the feeling that South Carolina was never in the game, but you didn't think it would fall apart for them the way it did in the second half. First, they're down by 5 points at the end of a quarter, then 10 points at the end of the half. And you're wondering whether they can make a run. They're not looking good, but it is only 10 points. And we see fortunes change very quickly in basketball. I don't want to say any Dawn Staley team has ever given up. That would be harsh to say. And I'm not saying that. But basically, UConn just ran over them in the second half. And they never, kind of regrouped. They never showed any physicality under the boards. I mean, UConn would take the ball right to the basket, and it was as if South Carolina was just moving out of the way. Like they were intimidated. They were beaten. Mentally they were beaten. They showed no fight. And I know when they interviewed Dawn Staley before the fourth quarter began and the team was 20 points down, she said the right thing. Well, one bucket at a time, one stop at a time. that sounds good, and that's what coaches normally say. But her team just didn't show any grit yesterday at all. It's not a reflection on her as a coach. Don't get me wrong, but it was a disappointing effort for South Carolina. You just see them walking back to the huddle dejected, not showing any, fight to come back.
Yeah, that game was difficult to watch. This is UConn's 12th NCAA championship. That final score 82-59, Jack. I mean,
closer than the game. The score made it seem closer than it actually was.
it was about 30 points. UConn, Paige Buckers, of course, her final game. She had 17 points, and for her UConn record, she's 37-3. So she only has lost 3 of her games at UConn while she played there. What a huge feat for her to go into the WNBA with that type of record. I knew when Caitlin Clark left there in the whole college sports thing, I felt like Paige would be picking up her reins, and she has. You're frozen, Jack.
Yeah. I hope Paige doesn't have to. I'm going to get on. I'm going to be back 1 second.
Okay. All right, guys. So while Jack is over adjusting all of his technical stuff, we're going to continue on. Of course, that game was the big game last night. And of course, unfortunately, Dawn Staley, once again, the UConn Huskies always are her kryptonite. If I remember correctly, last year was a same thing with Dawn and the same organization. So it's going to be interesting to see how everything pans out for next season, where Paige Buckers ends up. Of course, the WNBA draft now, the next thing on the horizon for women's sports. And March Madness continues on tonight with the Florida versus Houston game. That's tonight for the men's championship, and that will be a finale. We've already talked about Duke, so y'all know I'm not going to rehash that. And all right, so right now we got NFL news today, mock draft being the big thing that's coming up on our list. Of course, the big talk continuing to be Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders, where they actually end up. Let's be clear, it's not going to be Tennessee, guys. Everybody's been talking about that, even though Tennessee has the #1 pick. It just does not make a lot of sense. However, predictions have Shedeur going between 1 and 5, and some analysts even placing him at the #8 or #9 spot. My Panthers pick 8, so I'm pretty sure we won't be picking Shedeur, seeing that we are very happy with where Bryce Young is right now. And the Panthers are known that they're going to be building around their defense and, of course, trying to accentuate offensive positions for Bryce. So where does that leave Shedeur Sanders? We do not know. We do not know. He, of course, attended his pro day. Finally did a pro day. It worked out. So with that being said, Tennessee said, hey, you know what? We've had you scheduled to come by and work out with us. We're going to cancel that. Y'all, I have no idea why Tennessee has this man scheduled. The big news, of course, is, of course, with Travis Hunter. Where would he actually go? He's definitely predicted to go in the top 5. So is Cam Ward. And the draft here coming up in about a couple of weeks. It's right around the corner, April 27th. Make sure you stay tuned for all breaking news with draft parties, etc. On my platform, Prim and Proper Sports. We're having a big draft party here in Atlanta. And I'm sure there's a lot of big parties where you are for the draft. All right, let's see what other NFL news we have going on right now. Let's see. The Cowboys are talking about their roundup, where their need are. We never really talk about the Cowboys that much because, every year is their year. So we feel like they're already solid wherever they need to be. However, they are asking if Joe Milton is going to be their long-term solution. Of course, Joe Milton just going to the Cowboys and then finally releasing Trey Lance to the California team out there, the Los Angeles Chargers. Trey didn't get a lot done with the Cowboys. And honestly, guys, I feel like they're in a position that they're continuing to scramble to see just what works for them. Of course, they have their offensive coordinator now that has been promoted to the coach, Schottenheimer. So it's going to be important to see where they land. It's going to be important to look at how Dak comes back, if he comes back actually fully healthy fully recovered. Of course, he's been out for quite a spell with his injury, hamstring injury, and actually having to have surgery. And good morning to you, Sean. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm sitting here right now. Jack has some technical difficulties, so I'm Sonja here for the Mac and Jack show. I hope you're doing well, Sean, and thank you so much for joining me this morning. All right, guys. So it's so weird. Like, this is one of the time of year that we kind of like just look for news all over to see where everything is. Of course, you could basically talk about NFL all day because that never lulls. And of course, the NBA has kind of been, but we'll get there in a minute. Yeah, Sean. So Sean says Joe Milton has a cannon for an arm. I wonder if he'll get a chance to start. Sean, that's a really good point. I'm wondering if he'll get a chance to start too. So what the Cowboys tend to do is draft these quarterbacks. And if Dak is healthy and Dak plays good, then that other quarterback really has a minimal appearance. They don't really show them up a lot. They kind of just have them in as a backup. Joe Milton comes highly, regarded. And so it's going to be important to see how he comes in, how he acclimates to the Cowboys, how he acclimates to the playbook, gets everything down, and how he actually, allows Dak, if he's a healthy Dak, to mentor him and bring him fully into that position. So that's gonna be important to see. Let's go back for just a moment. This game tonight, it's been all over the news. I didn't realize how many people hated Duke. I'm a Duke fan, of course. I did not realize how many people hated Duke until we lost. The hate is real. It is not just from Tar Heel fans. It's everybody was so happy to see Duke fall. So my question this morning is, does Cooper Flagg come back to Duke and try to run it back one at a time, or does he go ahead and enter the draft? Now, people are really tossed up about that because the number one draft pick in the league right now is not good. It would be between Washington, Charlotte, and I think the Magic. There's not like really robust teams that are out there for the number one pick. So people are saying, well, Cooper should just wait. He's got an NIL deal while he's in school. That'll be solid for him to just continue on more and then, run it back. I'm of the faith. Cooper's had a couple of close calls with injuries. Oh, Jack is back. So sorry, guys. Hey, Jack, I'm so sorry I didn't even see you.
Yes, Sonja, I have been back for a while. I got to tell everyone. I texted you, I called you, and you're talking, telling everyone I have technical difficulties when I'm backstage. That was frustrating, Sonja. I know you wanted to get in your words because I would probably rudely cut you off, your train of thought. So you had to get in what you wanted to say. I kind of suspect it was deliberate.
No, my screen was.
I'll never know.
My screen was.
I can't prove it, but
my screen was big, and so I don't see anything but the screen, and I just reduced it. I'm so sorry, Jack. So
you wanted to get in a word about your Carolina Panthers. They have nothing to do.
You've been here that whole time.
They have nothing to do. The Carolina Panthers I take it back. They might have something to do with Shedeur Sanders. I'll tell you why. Because the New Orleans Saints pick number 9. And if Shedeur Sanders is still there, and I think he will be, in my opinion, he will be there at number 9 for the Saints. But unless Cleveland takes him at 2, and I don't think they will. The Saints, there's a good chance the Saints take Shedeur Sanders at number 9. So one of the other teams picking at the back end of the draft, like the LA Rams, they might offer some type of deal to move up. They might offer a deal to Carolina, just some type of deal. Maybe their number 1 draft choice next year and the number 2 and the number 4, something like that. To flip-flop so they could move down to number 1. I don't know. I'm getting a little bold with my trade proposition. But I could see Carolina getting a call, kind of like the way the Jets got last year from the Vikings, who wanted to be sure they got J.J. McCarthy.
Yep.
The Vikings weren't scared the Jets would draft them. They were scared another team would call the Jets and offer something. So they gave the Jets a 3rd-round draft choice when the Jets were on the clock for only 5 minutes. So
You never
It's
know.
always a
Carolina
toss-up on that.
might be open for business with that number 8 pick, mainly for that reason.
Wouldn't that be some get back if we ended up grabbing Shador just so nobody else, the Saints, couldn't grab him, and we don't even really?
No, it would be foolish. Come on, it'd be a slap in the face to Bryce Young. I know backup quarterback's important, but not, a young quarterback.
Yeah, now with him being that young.
In the future, what are they going to do? I'll tell you this, though. If Bryce Young had been struggling in those last few games and hadn't shown the improvement he showed, there's absolutely a good chance they would have been looking towards Shador Sanders and thinking to themselves, well, we can't count on Bryce to rebound. If he does, that'll be great, but we have to look elsewhere. But that's not the case. I think the Panthers are buying into Bryce Young now.
Yeah, we definitely are. Speaking of, what is your team pretty sold on the quarterbacks that you guys have got? I really want to talk to you about that.
I mean, the Jets with Justin Fields there, it's the jury's still out. They're giving Justin Fields a chance to be the franchise quarterback. That's why the Jets can't draft Shador Sanders, another quarterback, with the 7th pick. Well, the only 2 quarterbacks, he'd be the only possible quarterback they drafted, number 7. Cam Ward's going to be gone, of course, by then. But if you draft the Shador Sanders, you can't waste that pick. That means he's got to be your quarterback of the future. At most, you could keep him on the bench 1 year, and that's telling Justin Fields he can't be your guy. He just can't be your guy going forward.
He's nobody's. He's not been anybody's guy for a couple of seasons now.
He was on the cusp. He was the bad quarterback for 3 seasons. Keep that in mind. And they moved on from him in large part because the Bears had the number 1 pick in the draft, thanks to the Panthers, of course. If they weren't able to draft Caleb Williams, they probably would have continued to stick with Justin Fields. And Justin Fields did start for the Steelers when Russell Wilson was out, and a lot of people felt the Steelers should have maybe stuck with him. So he's kind of like a fringe starter right now at most, Justin Fields. So we're going to find out whether he's a legitimate NFL starter or not, with the Jets. But the jury's still out. They're giving him an opportunity. He's not a bridge quarterback, Justin Fields. Even though the Jets haven't made a long-term commitment to him, they're willing to go forward with him for now.
Yeah, I think, I really thought Justin Fields was going to be the quarterback of Pittsburgh. I actually watched the opening game of the Steelers versus the Falcons here in person, and he looked really good. I mean, of course, I knew that they said later Russell was injured, and I kind of had a joke about that, like he just didn't want to play in Atlanta. But it really was, but then all of a sudden at 4-2, he was benched, and everybody couldn't figure out, like, hey, he hasn't lost a lot of games. Why is he benched? But of course, that was because they wanted to bring Russell in to see how Russell acclimated. And of course, now they're both gone. So it's just crazy.
It's crazy about the whole thing. You look at the musical chairs at the quarterbacks. Mike Tomlin could have retained both Russell Wilson or Justin Fields to be his starter next season. And he didn't want either of them to be a starter. So Russell Wilson can start for the Giants. Justin Fields can start for the Jets, but they can't start for Pittsburgh. Aaron Rodgers can't start for the Jets anymore. Maybe because it's attitude. They want a new beginning, but he can start for the Steelers. They don't mind his attitude or whatever. They're very happy to wait on him, to have him. Sam Darnold can't start for the Vikings anymore, but he can start for Seattle. You look at that. Geno Smith can't get the contract with Seattle, but he can get it with the Raiders. You're kind of looking at these musical chairs. When one quarterback leaves one franchise, other franchises are so desperate for quarterback, they start salivating. And then you look at all these backups hanging around. They've had multiple opportunities to start with other teams. Sometimes they land in a nice place the way Baker Mayfield did with Tampa Bay, and everything works out in the long run. But then you look at the Carson Wentz. He went from Philadelphia, to Indianapolis, to the Washington Commanders, to the Kansas City Chiefs. And now he's going to be looking for fifth team. He's not going to be on the Chiefs because their backup is now Gardner Minshew at Kansas City. So think of it. He's going to have his fifth team somewhere.
That's so weird. I mean, Carson Wentz, of course, Super Bowl winning Carson Wentz, as they say, put some respect on it. But he got them where they needed, got the Eagles. Once a quarterback has a ring with a team or has at least gotten them to getting to the position of getting a ring, and then they get injured or whatever, that quarterback should be a little bit more accessible, a little bit more wanted. And let's be clear, anybody going to the Chiefs as a backup quarterback, you're not going to see them. You're not going to ever see them play, because even when Patrick Mahomes gets hurt, he'll go to the sideline and come back out. Like, he's not going. I don't remember him missing any time for an injury, Jack.
Sonja, when you go shopping, and I know this is where I go when I go shopping, what do we look at? We look at the clearance rack. We always look to see, can we get a bargain? They have so much things on the clearance rack. You look, you go buy it quickly. The odds are you're not going to get anything on it, but you might come upon one big bargain. And that's what the NFL is with high draft choices, like a Carson Wentz, who was drafted, second, I believe it was. I think Jared Goff was the first that year. Zach Wilson, the number 2 overall pick in the draft. You see these guys, they're kicking around the league for a few years, like a Trey Lance is a great example. All these guys who are drafted very highly, they can kick around the league for years, not having done anything. They could have been unsuccessful elsewhere, but teams still want them, not necessarily to start. They think they could rehabilitate, and they think, wow, we're getting a bargain. A team picked this guy number 2 overall in the draft 5 years ago, and now we can get him for 10 cents, on the dollar or whatever. And that's what happens. But these guys are given kind of an opportunity. It's funny, Zach Wilson, he leaves the Jets much maligned. He goes to Denver. He's their third string quarterback. Okay, he was going to play behind Bo Nix, but third string. And now he goes to Miami, and he's Tua's backup. He's his main backup, and we know how injury-prone Tua is.
Yeah, folks are over him.
So Zach Wilson is probably going to get playing time this year. So he's going to get a chance to actually revive his career with Miami, and who knows, maybe he plays well with Miami. And maybe they move on from Tua. Tua's continues to miss a lot of games. And as crazy as it is, by the end of the season, Zach Wilson could conceivably be locked in as Miami's starting quarterback. And you might laugh and say, oh, that's crazy.
It is.
But, who knows how he's going to perform. I mean, you can never tell. With the Chargers, I mentioned Trey Lance a little while ago. He's Justin Herbert's backup. So Trey Lance is not seeing the field under any condition, Justin Herbert healthy, but he has a cushiony job. It's not such a bad job to be an NFL backup. You could get a few $1 million a year. You play very little. You come to practice. You can maintain that job for a number of years because you're not failing as a backup. As long as you're good in practice, helping your team get ready, you're supportive of the starter, the coaches like you, you could kick around the league. You could have employment for years.
I mean, from a financial perspective, that's true. But I just think about these quarterbacks that come in high in the draft. So let's start first. If you come in high in the draft, you're going to the worst team. It's just how the analytics play out. Unless somebody makes a trade for that position, usually the number 1 pick is the worst of the league for that season. So you're not going to a Super Bowl caliber team to begin with. You're going to a team that clearly has some issues, either offensively or defensively. And unless someone has made a trade for that position that has a pretty stellar record, you're going in to basically rebuild that team. God forbid you're going to a team that's having coaching issues or that they've just brought a coach in, then you're going to have that also step to acclimate. So you're coming into the league, you're coming in personally trying to acclimate to the NFL instead of college, because now you are playing against the best of the best and not just trying to be the best. So you're already coming in with this one mark, as they say, kind of against you, coming in with something to prove. Then you're coming in like, can I be a difference maker for this organization? If you are coming in and you are there 2 seasons, 3 seasons, and all of a sudden somebody's like, you know what? You're not going to be what we want. We're going to go get a veteran quarterback. We're just going to leave you here. And the next thing you know, you are musical chairs around the league. How many seasons should a top draft, and I mean like maybe the top 3, I wouldn't say 5, but top 3 quarterbacks. We had a heavily saturated quarterback draft last season. How many seasons should the league overall, like how many seasons do you think a person coming in, especially high performing like that, should be given before they're like, you know what, you are going to be a career backup. You'll never have a start. Like you'll never be that franchise quarterback like we thought you would be. How many seasons do you think is normal to think about?
No, that's a good question, Sonja. I think the problem is when a quarterback's drafted very highly and he's showing he doesn't quite have what it takes, they stick with him longer because GMs look really bad if they waste, a high draft pick like that. Mm-hmm. You can afford to miss on a 4th or 5th round draft pick, but in the first 3 rounds, especially the first round, you don't want to make a wrong selection and then have the guy who went right, the GM that went right after you, hit on a great selection. I mean, Tom Landry, the legendary Cowboy coach, and we could say that was the old days, used to say it takes 5 years for a quarterback to develop. 5 years.
Wow.
That was in that time, okay? You don't have that novelty. The guy's got to show something in the first year, at least potential, okay? You take a quarterback like Will Levis at Tennessee. He's been erratic his first couple of years, okay? Maybe if they stuck with him in the 5-year plan, he develops into a really good quarterback. Maybe then, maybe not. Mm-hmm. But if you put in all this time in him and give him the few years and he's not developing, think of all the time you wasted. It's like being in a relationship.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, you're going out with someone, you want to give it time, see how it works out, but you don't want to waste all this time with the other person, and but to your point about the high draft picks going to bad teams, how much they could help. In the modern NFL, you could turn things around and run. Look, the number 2 overall pick in the draft last year was Jaden Daniels. Mm-hmm. So supposedly he went to a bad team, the Commanders, and the Commanders came 1 game away from going to the Super Bowl.
Yes, they did.
Now they're a contender. The Chicago Bears, Caleb Williams went to the Bears last year, the number 1 overall pick. They lost a bunch of close games, had a bad what were they, like 7-10 at the end of thereabouts?
7-10.
But the point is, this season, a lot of people think they're going to make the playoffs. Okay, they'll at least be a playoff contender. They're projected to be that. You might not have that opinion, but they're projected to be better, put it that way, and you can turn it around quick in the NFL, and it could collapse too. Cleveland now doesn't look too good, 2nd overall pick, but the year before last, they made the playoffs. So fortunes, do change quick in the NFL.
Yeah, the NFL, I'm going to tell you, it literally does mean not for long to me. They say misery loves company, Jack, and last season, season before last now, because we just wrapped up 1 season. We're going into the OTAs, the spring training for the new season. it felt like it was very lonely on the bottom. Like the Panthers were so, far down there. Everybody was down there talking about us. I couldn't even go anywhere without someone that knew me, or if they saw my car because I have Panther stuff on it, they, want to talk about how bad we were. But we had a lot of company this past season, a lot of company down there that were equal or less than, what our record looked like. And so it's just one of those things. It's very frustrating. Okay, every season, every team has like a season or two that they're not the best. But then when you start having like 9 seasons of losses, which is where I am and where some other teams are, it gets frustrating as a fan. You brought up relationship as a comparison, and I was just thinking earlier that it's kind of like a girlfriend, boyfriend that you feel like it doesn't work out with you. So you move on to other people to date. And then they flourish, or you figure out, okay, they're not going to flourish because there's a character flaw with this person. And it's this person that's the issue. So even if they move to another relationship, the issue is with them. They're still not going to work. So that's how we look at quarterbacks. If the issue is their performance and they just can't acclimate to any team, no matter how many weapons you put around, and no matter how you try to reinforce them and give them all the tools they need. I mean, we saw Kyler Murray with the Cardinals. His coach was like, I need you to study that playbook, and you're going to not play until I know for a fact you are reading and studying that playbook and studying film. And so he had to build back up. So he kind of, it's kind of like, okay, we're going to take a little break right here to see if we can kind of come back together. And then that person works on themselves, they get therapy or whatever, and then all of a sudden they're a better person. And then they make it work.
Yeah, you mentioned Kyler Murray. Is he the most forgotten starting quarterback in the NFL? And he's charismatic. That's the weird part about it. What do you make out of Kyler Murray, for example? I mean, he was the number 1 overall choice in the draft, and he hasn't been bad. He hasn't. He's been somewhat successful, but his teams haven't gone to the next level. Is Arizona ready to take the next step? Is he ready to finally break out? Maybe he is. Maybe Kyler Murray is your example of the 5-year quarterback who's now ready to finally take off. He's had his few years in the league. I have no idea what to make out of Kyler Murray at all because I don't know him. I don't know how much his desire is, how badly he wants to win. He might want to win very badly for all I know. I just don't know his mindset. We know he's talented and this and that. I'm not sure how hard he works. Maybe that playbook thing we're making too much out of. I don't know. But Kyler Murray's finally got to get an identity. I know this. They got a Marvin Harrison Jr., who I thought was the best player coming out of the draft last year. And Marvin Harrison had just a so-so year for what you expected. He was good, but you wanted Marvin Harrison to come in and be absolutely great, a stud. And Kyler Murray didn't quite utilize him fully that way. So, we'll see what goes on with Arizona this year. But I think it's a very big year for Arizona. They can't be mediocre. They can't be 8-9. Arizona's finally got to take, the next step. At least double-digit wins. At least go 10-7 and get a wild card berth.
I mean, Kyler Murray, I pulled his stats up. And you're right. He's one of the points I'm making. Kind of like these teams that just are. It's like a purgatory, Jack, to be honest with you. They're neither good nor bad. And it's just like it's just there. It's a very uncomfortable place to be. You don't know. You just can't put a lot of hype around them, but you can't be upset because they're just there. Kyler Murray's been in the league since 2019. He came in with an astronomical year, started out with 3,722 yards his first year, 20 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions, which to me that's kind of close. I'm first year 87.4% rating, but his 2021 season, He had 3,767 yards, 24 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions, but he had 100% passer rating. So he had a good passer rating. Last season in 2024, he had 3,851 yards. So that was his highest yards that he's had. 21 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. He cannot come over the hurdle of the split between interceptions and touchdowns. And he was rated 93.5 passer rating. Every season that I'm looking up for him, in 2023, he only had 1,700 yards. That was his lowest yards that he's had for his performances with the Cardinals. Good morning, Yoli. How are you? Good morning, Richard, and good morning, Brian. Thank you all for joining us this morning. Feel free to chime in the comments. And so I just feel like this has to be the season that they either keep him or move on, because he came in as the number one. He's performing, but let's see, his contract right here says he has a 5-year, $230,500 contract, including a $20 million signing bonus, and he has until
Is he a franchise quarterback? If he's a franchise quarterback, he's worth the money on today's market. If you're the GM of the New Orleans Saints, who are going number 9 overall, and Arizona calls you and they offer you Kyler Murray for your number 1 pick, number 9 overall, do you make the deal and pay Kyler Murray the money? Do you feel, wow, we've got our franchise quarterback?
I mean, you absolutely do. His numbers speak for themselves, but they got a contract with him extended until 2028. So somebody's going to have to come up with that money if they do move him around. I mean, their general manager said that the deal included certain aspects and that they just signed this deal in October.
Well, they're committed to him. No, the Arizona's committed to Kyler Murray. There's no question about it. But Kyler Murray, is it like running on a treadmill? Are you advancing, anywhere with him? That's the question.
Going nowhere.
He's got to be a difference maker. He's got to take the Arizona Cardinals to a higher place. And is he going to do it? That's the question. I mean, Kyler Murray's a very exciting quarterback. Okay, he's got the physical tools. I'm not saying he's not intelligent as well. But there's something about Kyler Murray. You want a little more out of him at this point. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he's worked for it though. He's done the work. So I think maybe they've got to build around him.
Let me put it another way. If Kyler Murray were the quarterback of the Buffalo Bills, would he be taking them to the next level the way Josh Allen has? I don't want to hear the nonsense. Well, the Bills haven't gone to a Super Bowl. It's a team game, and the Bills have come as close as they have primarily because of Josh Allen. I mean, there's certain quarterbacks that are impact quarterbacks. Certain quarterbacks, play to the team. I mean, you can get a very average quarterback, and if you give him a great offensive line, really good receivers, good running backs, he's going to be successful. But, the NFL is about difference makers. We saw Jaden Daniels with the Commanders. He was a difference maker. He made things happen. You want quarterbacks who can make big plays. And some quarterbacks can, some can't. I mean, Jared Goff, very good, solid quarterback for the Lions. Very good quarterback. But he's not a difference maker. He's not going to go out there and win you games. Kyler Murray's the type of quarterback who could potentially go out there and win you games like a Lamar Jackson can, for example. So I expect a little more, out of Kyler Murray than we've been getting.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of Kyler Murray and kind of sticking with that same segue, I feel like Kyler could get it done in Buffalo. Josh Allen is a different type of quarterback, though. But I feel like I don't think he would be on Josh's level as far as performance, but I think he could lead the Bills, because the Bills have a solid team around them. They're stacked on both sides.
Let's define it a different way. Any team Josh Allen goes to, he's going to make that team better, unless the team's already elite, like the Philadelphia Eagles, the Kansas City Chiefs, etc. Okay, he's going to make a team better. If Josh Allen went to Arizona, chances are he would make Arizona better. If Kyler Murray went to Buffalo, chances are he wouldn't make Buffalo better. Okay, that's what I'm trying to say.
I don't see the better part. Now that part makes a difference. I want to ask you about this though, Jack, because I've noticed the trend in the NFL every time. Well, at least I don't want to say every time, because I don't want to sound like Michael Scott in The Office when he's doing this Chris Rock skit. But it's common that quarterbacks, and any player for that matter, but particularly quarterbacks, because I'm going to talk about this quarterback next, that hold out for contract extensions, that do, in my mind, the money game. Like, okay, well, you pay this person over here, this team paid them over here, I want $1 million more than that person got, whether or not their performance matches or not. We look at Trevor Lawrence. He got a big contract, then he got injured. He has not fulfilled the obligations of that contract. But the main person I'm talking about right now is Dakota Rain Prescott, Dak Prescott, highest paid quarterback in the league, $60 million a year. And he and CeeDee Lamb and all these guys held out for this contract. And we saw Dak on the sidelines in the press box the entire season. Joe Burrow, of course, $55 million right behind him, but Joe lost a lot of his offensive weapons. And of course, Trevor Lawrence at $55 million. Those are the top 3 paid quarterbacks. And Dak has not gotten them a ring. They've gotten to the wild card or first round, and then they're out. And I just don't understand, how quarterbacks, because he exudes the 5-year rule. He exudes that. He's past that.
Yes, Dak Prescott is a pretty good quarterback. I mean, I'm not downplaying him. There was no need for Jerry Jones to sign him when he did, but I think Jerry Jones was hearing from social media and all. He'd hear from people like Stephen A. Smith, how come he doesn't sign the brother?
Yes.
And then Stephen A. says, well, he would sign Tony Romo if Tony Romo, he throws the racial angle.
Yes,
Jones. And Jerry Jones is holding out a while, and ultimately he signs Dak Prescott, who, again, is a very good quarterback, and I think a good leader as well. But there was time to get the deal done. He could have waited. Where was Dak Prescott going to go? If he became a free agent, is another team going to make him the highest paid quarterback in the NFL? It's always a possibility that would have happened. But he could have gotten this deal done later. But look, Dak is going to be starting for the Cowboys next year. He is a very good quarterback. Okay, let's not downplay him. Is he as good as Josh Allen? Is he as good as Patrick Mahomes? Is he good as, let's put Jalen Hurts, a Super Bowl winning quarterback, at the back end of that conversation. Is he as good as him? He's not as good as Joe Burrow, but he's a pretty good quarterback. But now Jerry Jones has to deal with the Micah Parsons situation. Do you give Micah Parsons the huge money, the huge contract? Micah Parsons is a great player, but is he going to be worth all that money? But they set the bar. CeeDee Lamb did not deserve to get paid as if he was, the highest paid receiver in the NFL. He is not as good as Jamar Chase. He's not as good as Justin Jefferson. He's just not that good. I mean, he's pretty good, CeeDee Lamb, but he's not a superstar type receiver, and they gave him, superstar money for the position. And, it's a value judgment, but because you have the cap and you're the Cowboys and you're tying up a lot of your money in your quarterback, your receiver, now Micah Parsons, you're tying it up in 3 players. It hurts a little elsewhere to make certain signings and to wheel and deal.
And a lot of teams are facing those salary cap issues. Richard, what I meant, because Richard is saying Burrows did not lose his weapons. They signed both wide receivers. Last season, the Bengals acquired Khalil Herbert from the Bears, but they got rid of Joe Mixon, and that was a really big miss for, in my opinion.
They're doing it
for Joe
again.
Burrow.
They're making a mistake again.
Good morning, Brent.
Signing Jamar Chase for the Bengals was a must. Jamar Chase is great. He is great. He's Joe Burrow's main guy. He was essential. T. Higgins is a very good receiver, but he's not a superstar receiver.
Right.
But they signed T. Higgins to make Joe Burrow happy. Joe Burrow's happy. And now Trey Hendrickson, they're great, defensive linemen. They're probably going to lose. He was more important to get signed than T. Higgins. But they're thinking of making Joe Burrow happy. See, meanwhile, you, Sonja, criticize Aaron Rodgers. Oh, the Jets just want to make him happy. He's a prima donna. But Joe Burrow's basically doing the same thing with his receivers.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's bringing in his guys.
His people, right.
They've been with them all along, don't get me wrong. But Trey Hendrickson is more important to the Cincinnati Bengals than T. Higgins, yet they got it backwards.
Well, yeah, they signed Jamar Chase to a 4-year contract extension through 2029. That's March of this year that they signed him. And like you said, they've been bringing in people. They got Samaje Perine. Of course, he signed a 2-year deal. That's a big deal for them. Their tight end, Mike Gesicki, is still there. Gesicki, excuse me. And when they put that franchise tag on T. Higgins back in March, of course, now, that was a big thing. So I think the difference for me is Joe Burrow is maybe bringing his guys in and stuff like that. He don't have that attitude that Aaron Rodgers has, that sense of entitlement. Brian is saying golf don't win you games. 17 fourth quarter comebacks, 20 game winning drives. Come on, Jack.
Brian, he plays to the team he's on. Right, Goff isn't a difference maker. Goff himself doesn't go out and win a game. Just because a team goes on a drive and wins a game, if it's a wide open game, let me put it another way, Brian. If it's a wide open game, a shootout type of a game, do you really want Jared Goff to be your quarterback over, a Josh Allen, a Patrick Mahomes, a Joe Burrow? He's not that type of difference maker. He's just not.
Yeah, and then Brent says, and this is what I was going to talk about next, the Bengals put so much money into their offense, like they're not going to have any money for the defense left. And that's Brent is saying, how can they even afford Trey, pay him and push the can down the road? They have 40% of their cap space tied up in those 3 players that Burrow wanted. I mean, everybody noticed that.
Well, they're buying into Joe Burrow's 100%, and I'm not saying they shouldn't do it. They signed Jamar Chase. He's their big weapon. T. Higgins is a wonderful receiver. He's not a number 1 receiver for a team. He's not that type. Okay, He's not like an A.J. Brown type. He's not even a Garrett Wilson, with the Jets type who didn't flourish because of Aaron Rodgers when Aaron Rodgers came over. But, another thing about Jared Goff, let me just backtrack. He was the quarterback for the LA Rams. They did go to the Super Bowl with him, but they moved on from Jared Goff for Matthew Stafford because Matthew Stafford was a difference maker. And the difference was the Rams won the Super Bowl with Matthew Stafford. Had their quarterback been Jared Goff instead of Matthew Stafford, chances are the Rams, lose to the Bengals there in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's like we started talking about it. The fact that it's a quarterback carousel. So he said Goff has been to the Super Bowl.
No, Sonja, let me ask you this. If you have a choice between Jared Goff or Josh Allen, who do you take?
Josh Allen.
You have a choice, Jared Goff or Lamar Jackson, who do you take?
Lamar Jackson.
Of course. So the point is, it's a team game. I mean, as far as being to a he went to a Super Bowl where they got 3 points in the game. I mean, So what could I say? He's a good quarter. Listen, Jared Goff is a good quarterback. If you want to tell me he's one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the league and put him at 9 or 10 or something like that, okay, I don't have any particular order, but he's not one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Listen, you give me a choice, Jared Goff or Dak Prescott. I give a little edge to Dak, I think, but that's a bit closer.
Yeah, I mean, but Brent makes a good point. Like, if it was not for those two touchdown passes in the Super Bowl, we'd be talking about a different Goff.
There's always something there. You can mention. I can mention. Well, if Tony Romo didn't overthrow a wide open receiver during the game when the Giants won the Super Bowl the year they went 9-7, the Cowboys win that game. The Giants finish at 8-8, and the Giants never get to the playoffs, so they don't win the second Super Bowl with Tom Coughlin. There's always, that narrative you can point to a player to.
Yeah, what do you think? I was just looking here. There's a few top free agents that are still out there that people sometimes forget about. What do you think about the fact that Keenan Allen is still out there, like just dangling? He's not picked up by anybody yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cap situation. I mean, if there was complete free agency, he would have signed somewhere by now. He's gotten some offers. He's probably gotten lowballed, and because the money's not going to be that great for him this upcoming season, he's going to pick and choose a little more so. It's not a question of a team coming up with a really good offer and him figuring, I better grab this offer now.
Yeah, not only that, he's not got the best start. Last season, 17 catches for 161 yards in 5 games. That's pretty decent. But they said the Bears, he's never been considered like a burner, but he looked considerably slower last season, had some issues with his hands as well. But he was officially tagged with only 6 drops. So I don't know. Maybe he goes to a team where the weather's a little warmer. Who knows? But they're thinking that it's unlikely he doesn't quite fit what Ben Johnson's spread of offense is. With Ben coming and taking over, and maybe he'll go in and take over for Cooper Kupp and go over to somewhere like the Rams.
I'll tell you, it tells you a lot about the league that that the Rams could move on from Cooper Kupp. I mean, if anyone should have been a career player, and Cooper Kupp goes to the Seattle Seahawks. Mm-hmm. And you wonder, is that the best fit? I think Cooper Kupp went to Seattle because that's his hometown, kind of, the state of Washington, to be close to home. I don't think he went to the Seattle Seahawks because, he likes the quarterback. He likes the setup. He's making the best of the situation there. And he'll help Sam Darnold. He gives Sam Darnold, a veteran presence, a calming influence, experienced receiver who's been there, on a very elite level.
Yeah, it's funny how our talk this morning has kind of talked into some really good topics, Jack, especially when we started talking about the quarterback carousel, talked about how players kind of fade into the distance. And one player that's making that list is Amari Cooper. I mean, the once star name that you see out there is now with the Bills. He is, 3rd round pick in the beginning to add Cooper to the stretch, but wound up taking him off the field for Matt Collins in the playoffs. Before that in Cleveland, he was with Cleveland for a minute. He was basically just standing in Jerry Jeudy's space, way too big things. So then he lost a step. Now he's just a year removed from his 7th 1,000-yard season. Route running, usually reliable hands, but not the best hands last season again. But basically, we're trying to see if he could project to be a number 2 receiver for the team. Does the Bills allow him the restart that he needs?
Well, he was with Buffalo. So, they have Keon Coleman, too, from Florida. And they don't have like a stud receiver, the Bills. That's what the problem is. It's kind of like decent receivers. Amari Cooper's decent. He's not like an elite receiver, even though some people build him up as such before. And he's kicked around a few teams already. And Keon Coleman isn't the fastest receiver, but he's got potential. He had his rookie year last year, wasn't bad. And I don't know. Amari Cooper's okay, but he fits in, but not at best. He's a number 2 receiver. I would prefer him as a number 3 receiver myself.
Yeah, Brian's saying if we're measuring success by advancement based on your conditions, Jackson. So he's back to this discussion about Jackson and Allen and Goff.
That's okay.
Jackson doesn't get it done. Neither does Allen. Goff has comparable, if not comparable, if not better stats than either quarterback.
So, Brian, you could just answer for your team, the 3 of them. If you can have any of the 3, okay? They're all free agents. They can go to your team. You need a quarterback. Would you take Jared Goff over either Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson? Would you take him over either of those 2? And I want a straight out answer. Don't beat around the bush here. Don't give me statistics. Straight out answer, because Sonja and myself answered. We would take both Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson over Jared Goff. What would you do? I want to know.
Yeah.
And
so
we're waiting your answer. Okay.
While he's answering that, we know that the running back shelf life is not for long. And so I want to talk about another player that is only 29 years old, but his knees are awful. And that is none other than Nick Chubb. That's the running back for the Browns. Of course, he's basically, we've seen players just come out the blue and say they're going to retire. We're like, whoa, where's this coming from? He got injured with an ACL tear in 2023, the 2023 season in September, the beginning of the season, honestly. And of course, as a sophomore from Georgia, the UGA, the Dogs, he dislocated his left knee, tore his MCL, LCL. Like, he's got a lot of injuries coming into the league. But he's been outrushed now by Jerome Ford over the rest of the season, despite getting nearly twice as many carries, 102 to 54. But he does want to be in the game. He does want to continue to play. I mean, do the Browns need to move on for him and let him flourish with somewhere else, because the Browns are just that bad of an organization right now?
No, I mean, with Nick Chubb, you got to admire. You take Allen over.
That's Britt. That's Britt saying that, not Brian. That's another person.
Over Lamar Jackson, I don't think so. Lamar Jackson is a 2-time MVP on the Lion. Oh, no. Don't give me any little thing on the Lion offense. No. Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is dynamic. But Nick Chubb, if he wants to play and you have a player like that, Cleveland kind of sticks with him. But he's been injured so much.
Yeah.
You kind of wonder, why is he doing it? I mean, some guys just want to play so badly. They'll go through all these injuries and never give up. But you wonder, if you're running back, how much is it going to affect them? Can he ever come back and be close to being what he was? 9 years old, in constant injuries.
Yeah, sometimes it's one of those times when you look at it and it's time to close the curtains. And speaking of closing the curtains, that's all the time that Jack and I have for today. We are really appreciative of all the likes, loves, and shares. Of course, why is Lamar dynamic? Why is Josh dynamic? It's the teams that are around him. And, Jack and I will be back with you on Wednesday. And stay tuned on the Roku app for everything we got going here, so that you can be in the know on sports. Jack, it's been a pleasure hosting with you today. We wish everybody a great day.
Same here. Thanks for all the comments.
Thanks, guys.
National Streaming Sports is brought to you in part by BetUs.com, designed for true fans. NFL odds, Week 1 and futures, college football odds, including Heisman Trophy favorites and playoff odds, NBA odds of division winners and playoffs, Major League Baseball playoff and World Series odds, the National Hockey League Conference playoffs and Stanley Cup odds, and boxing wagers. Betting opportunities include versus the spreads and outright winners, also during the game. Use our link on our website, nessp.info, the Bet Us